of Intersections events is to look at our complex world through multiple dimensions, including race, class, sexual orientation, and gender. By examining our various identities, we come to a deeper understanding of how they differently situate people in the economic, political, and social world. Our three centers are committed to creating safe spaces for students to explore their identities and to become their fullest selves. We provide services and support to encourage personal development, as well as to provide opportunities for leadership and advocacy around social justice issues. In addition to our three offices, this program is generously co-sponsored by GVSU Laker Athletics, the Division of Inclusion and Equity, the Sports Leadership Club with funding from Student Senate. Just a couple of notes, Dr. Carlos has generously agreed to stay after and do a book signing at the back, and your evaluations mean a great deal to us, so please be sure to turn those in at the end. At this time, I'd like to introduce Lindsay Evans. She's a member of the GVSU Sports Leadership Club, and we are especially grateful for their commitment to bringing this program to campus. Please help me in welcoming Lindsay.
At this inaugural Intersections event, John Carlos, winner of the bronze medal in the men's 200-meter race at the 1968 Summer Olympics, will tell us his story. Dr. Carlos entered the Olympic Games with one thing in mind, to reach the platform in order to send a message, and along with Tommy Smith, his teammate and winner of the gold medal, the message was sent, reverberating throughout the world. Smith and Carlos raised black gloved fists, crowning bowed heads, to humbly reflect the strength of the black power in human rights salutes. We also have the privilege of hearing from renowned American sports writer Dave Zirin, whose documentary we just had the privilege of watching. The two will also discuss their recently completed book, The John Carlos Story, The Sports Movement That Changed the World. In this same book, Dave Zirin says of Dr. Carlos, "As a new generation of athletes and activists raise its fists, they can rest in the confidence that it's been done before. John Carlos dared and continues to dare to be more than just a brand. He has dared to live by a set of principles at great personal and professional cost. It's a standard we should all aspire toward, if we dare." So please join us in welcoming these two special guests as they help us examine the intersection of sports and politics in America.
How's everybody doing? Just a very disappointing turnout, so I'm just very briefly before we're going to do an interview on stage before I start asking John Carlos some questions, and then you guys will have the opportunity to ask questions of Dr. John Carlos. Just a very quick word about the film you just saw. You just saw the last 14 minutes of it, and it's going to be shown in its entirety here on campus next Wednesday at 9 p.m. in the Spotlight Theater. And every time I see it, and I've now seen it several hundred times, I think two things. The first is that I have a really big head, and I feel every time I see it, I want to write my mom an apology note. And the second thing, I think, is something I sent it to Dr. John here to check out, and I'll never forget. I said, "Well, what did you think?" And he said to me, "I see you saved the best for last." And he's absolutely right about that. We did save the best for last, because I consider what John Carlos and Tommy Smith did at those '68 Olympics an act the likes of which stands alone in the history of American sports and the history of American politics. And the fact that these two things came together in that moment, to me, makes it the kind of moment that could not be discussed enough. So we're honored to be here to kick off African American History Month here on your campus. Thank you so much for having us.
Let me just say a little something. I'd like to say, first of all, it's a real honor for me to be here in Grand Rapids. You know, only time I heard of Grand before was the Grand Canyon. And now the Grand Canyon in my mind is being pushed off the chart, because I guarantee you from this reception that you guys are putting on today, Grand Rapids will be in my heart for a long time. Thank you for coming out.
I hate it here. No, I'm just kidding. I was just kidding. Just trying to balance, a little fair and balanced up at the stage here. So, John, I just wanted to kick you up by asking the question that I know you've been asked more than any other over the last 43 years. And that's the question, why? You came in third in the race. You're approaching the medal stand. Why did you make that choice to put on the glove, take off your shoes, unzip your jacket, and make that statement?
Well, first of all, it wasn't about the medal. There was no need to suffice my taste buds for an Olympic medal. It was required by the Olympic rules and regulations. You had to have a medal to reach the victory stand. I had no qualms about whether I can make the Olympic team or whether I can win the gold medal or any medal for that matter. But I felt that, as Muhammad Ali said, you know, you have to use your career as an athlete as a stepping stone to be able to speak for those that can't speak for themselves. To be able to make a statement that you cannot forget those that's less fortunate, those that has been mistreated, those that wanted to go to a university couldn't get in, those that wanted an opportunity to have a decent job, those that wanted to live in various communities throughout this country. And then particularly the fact that this is the greatest nation on planet Earth. For us to have kids still being eaten by rats in the ghettos across America, when we sending spaceships to the moon to land and walk on Mars and all kinds of stuff, but we can't kill a rat or a cockroach here. For kids to still walk through the South with no shoes on their feet, back and forth in the 60s to and from school. We could not go to the Olympic Games and feel that, oh, I feel satisfied because God blessed me and gave me talent to go as an athlete. But also God gave me something greater than the talent as an athlete. He gave me the will to be a man. And any man on planet Earth, if you're a man, you're going to be concerned about your fellow man. That's why it was very necessary.
Now, when you took the podium, you bow your head, your eyes are closed. Can you take us into your mind at that moment? Like, what were the thoughts flashing through your head?
Well, my eyes wasn't closed. Mrs. Smith's eyes was closed. You know, my eyes are always based on the environment in which I grew up from. You never close your eyes because you never know what's coming. So, no, John Carlos' eyes wasn't closed. Yeah,
why wasn't your fist straight? Why was it cocked like this?
Well, my fist was cocked because the same reason why my eyes wasn't closed. So if someone came up to get my attention, I felt like if my fist was raised like Mr. Smith, it's kind of hard to come down and clock somebody when you need to. So I believe in turn the other cheek after I get your cheek. Okay? I felt it necessary to go out there. The question was,
what was floating through your head when you were up there on the stand?
Well, the main thing that floated through my head, first of all, I had a vision when I was a kid, about 7 years old. That was the most paramount thought that first projected in my head, because what was taking place at that precise moment happened as a little kid in this vision about the response from the spectators. So the first thing I said to myself was, oh, shucks. This is what that vision was about. But then I went from there to reflect on a meeting that I had with Dr. King, which I will talk about down the line, in terms of how committed Dr. King was. Then I thought from there about my father expressing to me about him being in the First World War and how it was for a black American to represent this great nation, and how they were treated during the war and how they were treated once they left the war. I was concerned about how things had progressed from the First World War to the Vietnam War, and it appeared that it hadn't changed that much, you know, relative to what was happening to Muhammad Ali or other individuals that was anti the war. All of those things percolated through my mind. I think the main thing by the time I was getting ready to exit the victory stand was, the first thing came to my mind at that time is that I'm a free man, and they'll never ever be able to put shackles on John Carlos again. And when you say shackles, we're not talking about the chain and balls anymore. We're talking about shackles on your brain. And that's the problem that we have as individuals in this society. They say we're free, but are we really free when someone has a lock on your mind. So I thought about all of those things in terms of setting a precedent for young individuals to realize that they can see this thing. This is not something that you hear on the Walkman. This is something that you can visualize, and then you can make your own determination as to whether it was the right thing or the wrong thing to be done. And right now, that's exactly why you guys are here, because you will go out of here with your own estimation as to whether it was right or wrong.
Can you tell the story of after the Olympics when you went home to Harlem and you saw your father?
Oh, it was heavy. Yeah, you know, when I went back to the games, you know, you don't realize how powerful the press is, the right-wing media at that particular time. We didn't have anyone that thought from the left in terms of saying, well, let me just lay the table out and we could divide the table. They could say their statement about what took place, and this is our statement. It was only one press, and that press did not paint us in a positive way. They painted us in a very negative way. At that particular time, my father was in the hospital getting ready to go see his maker. You know, and incidentally, I might add that my mother and my father never saw me run one track meet, whether it was on TV or in person. So my father's getting ready to leave this world, and I went to visit him because my mother told me, said, John, you need to go to the hospital and visit your dad because he's not eating, and the doc told me he's doing fine. So I go up there to talk to him about eating, and he told me, don't worry about the doc, something great is happening in that. He said, but I have a question I need to ask you, son. And I said, what's that, Pop? He said, why did you do all of those terrible things that you did? And I looked at him like, what terrible things? What are you talking about? And he went and got the New York Times, and he showed me the paper. And I read the article. I looked at my father, and I said to my father, hey, Pop, I said, do you know Professor Edwards? He said, no. You know H. Rap Brown? No. You know Stokely Carmichael? No. I said, do you know John Carlos? He looked at me, he said, come on, son, what are you talking about? I said, no, do you know John Carlos? He said, absolute, just like I know myself. I said, are you sure about that, Pop? I said, because the same thing they wrote about Malcolm X, Harry Edwards, or Rap Brown, or Stokely Carmichael, if you look on the other side of the page, they're writing the same thing about your son. Who knows John Carlos on this earth better than you? Is that me that they're writing about? And I remember my father breaking down in tears. And I'm breaking down in tears too with him, and I'm embracing my father. And while I'm embracing him, what's shooting through my brain is, man, if the press could put this in the paper and have my father to go against what he knows, I can imagine what's happening to the grassroots people in terms of them believing, because they put on the paper that John Carlos was a two-headed dragon spitting fire. Most people who went and read the headlines, let me give you for instance what I'm talking about. People ask me every day walking down the street, say, John, why'd you do so-and-so? Like, for instance, John, did you walk the water? Like God? No, of course not, I didn't walk the water. Well, man, the LA Times say you walked the water. So, well, I'm here to tell you, man, forget the LA Times. They're talking about me. I'm telling you, I didn't walk the water. Hold on. He gets his cell phone out. He calls New York. What does the New York Times say? New York Times say John Carlos walked the water. They look at me and tell me, say, John, you're lying, because the Times say you did it. So irregardless of whether I know what took place, I'm the individual, other people going to tell me about what somebody else said that I did. And this is the way we've been led for a long time.
You know, you mentioned your father, that there's a story, a terrific story that I think speaks to your guys' relationship, and it starts with the phrase, you got 48 hours.
48 hours. Yeah,
this is a growing up in Harlem in the 50s story, so hold on to your hat for this one here. What's you got 48 hours, and how did that end?
Well, you know, my old man was the type of guy where he would let you come out of the corner. You put yourself in the corner, but he'd give you enough room to come out. I had a situation one time where I had to deal with some caterpillars. Most of you guys know what caterpillars are, right? Well, my mom would never come downstairs with these caterpillars. Being in the project, they was just infestated. So I went to the manager and told the manager, say, man, I have a problem here. about these caterpillars. But I was young when I went in. I don't know, I must have been 14, 13. And he looked at me like, get out of my office. What are you doing in here telling me about some caterpillars? I said, wait a minute, man, I live in the project here. I have a right to ask you about these caterpillars. By that time, he didn't push the panic button. Here come the police and the housing guard come in. They wrestled me out. And I broke back in, and I told him, I said, hey, man, you got 48 hours. Now, the police looked at me and said, are you threatening him? No, sir. But it is a money-back guarantee. You got 48 hours. Now, that 48 hours came about because when I used to get in the mix as a young kid, that my father might not agree with what I did in my life at that time, he'd tell me, he said, son, you did X, Y, Z. You got 48 hours to tell me why you did it. What you think, I better understand what you thinking as to whether it was right or wrong for you to do it. I remember going to dinner. Next night, he'll come back and tell me, he said, well, you got 24 hours. In other words, you better have your answers right, because if you can't get it right, he's going to get it right for me. So I grew up with that. So when I went into battle for anything that I felt was right and people didn't want to move on it, I would use my father's statement. You got 48 hours. So when I went back to the manager in the project and I said to him, I said, man, what you going to do about the caterpillars? He said, I'm going to do what I did before. I'm going to have you taken out. I said, okay. 48 hours came, 48 hours left. I went to the gas station. So, hey, Mr. Gardner, my father sent me over here to get a can of gas. Well, where's your can? So he didn't have one. He said, you'll give me one. So he said, well, get one. I went and got a nice sized can, fill it up. And then he said, well, where's the money? I said, well, he said he'd take care of you with that later. So he give me the gas and I go. Now I go back to the project. I told all the women that used to sit downstairs, because any young man want to see your mama do the same thing everybody else's mama do. Come home from work, sit down, relax, have a soda, talk on the bench, you know, the gossip train. My mother was always upstairs in the window. She would never come down. I asked my mother, Mom, why don't you come downstairs? She said, well, son, you know, I work in the operating room at Bellevue Hospital, and I can't go in there with a rash on my neck. Anybody know about caterpillars? They're so fragile. If you go to wipe it off your neck, it's going to bust. By the time you move your hand back to your side, you got a rash in your neck. So I said, okay, now you got 48 hours and come and gone. So I went to the project with that can of gasoline, and I told all the women that was downstairs sitting on the bench in front of my courtyard, why don't you ladies go upstairs or go down the other end of the project? Oh, what is Johnny going to do now? What are you going to do now? Well, I took the gasoline and I hit the first tree. And then back that time we used to use stick matches, and I hit my zipper with the stick match and threw it in the tree and singed my face. I run over to the next tree and I hit the tree again with the gasoline. I couldn't get the match out. The fire jumped. So as a little walkway, courtyard to the other two trees, I hit the third tree. And by the time I hit the third tree, here's the police on me. They didn't know whether to tackle me or tackle the fire. So when they hesitated, then I hit the fourth tree. Well, they wrestled me down to the ground. Now, mind you, I want you to take into account the trees are doing real well. I want you to think I killed Mother Nature, because they're doing well. But the bottom line is, now they took me down to the police station. Took me to jail. And in my household, you know, my old man raised us, whatever you do, son, don't do anything to offend or embarrass the family name. I go to court. My mother said, I'm not going to court with you, son. No, I'm not going. Earl, you have to take him. Well, my father didn't have no problem with that. He took me to court. And I remember when we was in court, now here's probably one of my earliest civil activist moves. I get in there, the judge say, you ever been arrested before? No, sir. Looks at my father. Has he been arrested? Not to my knowledge, Your Honor. Judge said, well, let me ask you, does your son have any mental deficiencies? Well, are you saying, is he retarded? No, sir, he's not retarded to my knowledge either. Well, why would your son do what he did? And my old man looked at the judge and he said, well, Your Honor, that's a good question. And I'd like to know, too. He's here, why don't you ask him? And the judge looked at me, he said, right. He said, young man, why did you set those trees on fire? And I went to explain to him why, what. Now, In the process, I explained to him that my mother didn't come downstairs as a result of the caterpillars, and I felt that something needed to be done, and they wasn't doing it. Now, how do I know it's a difference in my project and in the white area and their project? There was no difference in the trees. The tree was the same tree. The caterpillars loved that tree. But every time I would go up to their area, they would be spraying every summer, spraying those trees. They sprayed my project when I was a little baby boy and moved into the project. I'm 14, 15 years old now. They never sprayed again. So the judge looked at the manager of the project. He says, when's the last time you guys sprayed Harlem River houses? And the guy looked at the judge and he told him, so, well, Your Honor, I don't have those papers in front of me. I really can't tell you how many times we sprayed. So the judge was a wise man. He looked at the guy and he said to him, he said, well, I'll tell you what, this is a perfect time to adjourn for lunch. When you come back from lunch, you bring those records that you don't have before you now. In the meantime, my father looking at me out of embarrassment that he's up in the court with his son for burning up the project, so to speak. We go to lunch, we come back, my old man is pointing the finger on me, son, if they're going to send you to reform school, the whole 9 yards. Now, we get back to the court. The judge says to me, he said, well, what did you tell the manager? I said, Your Honor, I told the manager he had 48 hours. I gave him enough time. And my father looked at me and he smiled because he knew what I was talking about. I said, but 48 hours came and left and I had to do what I had to do. So he calls the manager up. He said, did you bring those papers? And the manager comes with one sheet of paper. But the judge was even smarter than that. The judge had called when he went out to go get the papers and told somebody else from the City Housing Authority to come. They come with a big fat envelope, folder. The judge said, do you have your papers? He come up, he said, well, Your Honor, this is all I could find. He said, well, sit down. And he says, anyone here from the New York Housing Authority? And here come the guy come up with the papers. Well, they had been getting money every year to spray the trees, but they've been taking that money, pocketing the money, doing something else with it. And the judge said to him, he said, now, how often have you guys sprayed? And he looked at his paper. Every year they sprayed. He said to the manager, he said, every year? What's been happening to the money? Now, I done opened up a can of worms. All I wanted my mother to do is be able to come hang out. But now I realized that the manager was lying, and not only was he lying, but he was stealing the people's money too. Now, in the eyes of the judge, I'm not a little thug anymore. Now I'm a hero of the community. You know? And my dad, I noticed that his belly didn't swell up into his chest because he got pride now. And the judge commended me and told my father, said, you have a great son here, and he looked like he should be a lawyer one day. Well, I wasn't thinking about being no lawyer. But I remember when I left the courthouse, my father said to me in the hallway of the court, he said to me, he said, son, I just want to let you know. He said, I have the utmost pride in you, and I have the greatest respect in the world for you. You know what it is for a 15-year-old kid to hear his father tell him about how much respect that he had for you? You as a kid, 15, you're supposed to say that to your daddy. Daddy, I love you and I respect you. But for your dad to come and tell you that he loves you and respects you for something that you did, mind you, everybody in the project, when I hit them trees, they were saying, crazy Johnny, he's burning the project down. But they had no idea. 48 hours, that word or that statement, 48 hours, took me a long way.
I said this is a true story. I did a talk by myself about 2 months ago at Miami University of Ohio, and by some crazy coincidence, one of the workers in the admissions department grew up with John in Harlem River Projects. And he said, oh, you did this book with John? I said, yeah, we did this book. And he said, oh, I haven't read it yet. And then there was a pause, and he looks at me and he said, did he tell you about those trees? Which, I love that.
The reason that's kind of like gets to Dave, because when we started doing this book, I said to Dave, I said, Dave, do me a favor. Don't take verbatim what I say. I want you to go out and research what I tell you, because I ain't just trying to give you a bill of goods for you to put in the book. I want you to know that these are factual things. So like God that I know, he works miracles for me. And across the way, as he's been going out, a lot of people have been coming back to him, and they've been signing off on the things that I've been telling them.
Yeah, that is true. So this is the first event of Black History Month, and I think for these students here, you should know you're also meeting somebody here in John Carlos who grew up in Harlem, New York in the 1950s and early 60s, at a time where walking up and down the street was a gentleman born Malcolm Little, became known as Malcolm X. It was somebody who John had regular contact with just growing up in Harlem, and I think that would be something that would be very worth people hearing. Like, who was the Malcolm X that you actually knew, the flesh and blood human being?
Well, man, you know, the most prolific speaker for me at that time as a young guy was a guy named Adam Clayton Powell. I used to go to his church all the time and listen to him and hear him at the end of his sermons tell me to keep the faith. And then one day, you know, like for you guys in modern time, you got the big screen, the flat screen, the whole 9 yards. Well, my TV back at that time was the radio. You know, we imagine what you look like. Well, there was this guy on the radio. He was speaking so strong in terms of identity, in terms of who he was, what his race was all about, what he felt that their role would be in life and society, those roadblocks that was in our way. He felt that we need to move them out, but we can't move them out of our way until we have a full understanding as to who we are as black people in this society. I said, who is this guy? I like this guy. Why did I like him? Because he didn't feel a certain way. He acted out what he felt. He didn't say, I'm anti anybody other than the fact that he said, man, I have a right. I deserve the right to go to this community. I deserve the right to send my kids to this university. I deserve the right to apply for this job. I like that. So when I heard that he was coming, he was a Muslim and he was coming to the mosque. Now, I was a Catholic. I ain't no Muslim. But when they said he was going to 116th Street to the mosque there, I told my dad, I said, Pop, I said, who's this guy, Malcolm X? I said, I don't know, son. He's some radical. I said, radical? I said, well, I want to go down and hear what he had to say. And my old man knew if he didn't let me go, I was going to go anyway. So he told me, he said, son, go down there and don't get yourself in no trouble. Well, I went down there, just like these people got here early to get these front rows. Well, I got there early to make sure I sat dead front center. And I listened to him, and I said, God, this guy sounds like me. Now, when I heard him talking and blowing the way he blew, I figured that Malcolm X had to be dark as my shoes, because he was just blowing too black to be such a fair-skinned guy. I said, nah, man, it can't be the same guy. But when he started talking, I mean, he just raised me up, because he was so sharp in his delivery. He was so stern in his belief. His attitude was not to say that I'm against anybody, but those that was against him, his attitude was, I'm here to tell you that I deserve the right to be treated as a human being and respected as a human being. I like that. So as he spoke that day, I came back, talked to my brothers, tried to get them to go. They didn't want to go. Next week, I was right back down there that next Sunday. And then after the second time I went to him, I waited for him until everything was said and done. And I went to him and I said, Mr. X, I say, is it possible? You know, I introduced myself, of course. I said, is it possible that I could walk with you to your next location, whether it be the subway or a building or going to eat or whatever? Is it possible I can go with you? And he looked at me and he said, why would you like to go with me? I said, just so I could ask you some questions. And he kind of liked that. He smiled with his dimples, and he told me to say, sure. But I didn't realize at the time that this was getting me in shape for track and field too, because Malcolm X was a fast walker. And I had to actually jog to keep up with him. You know, but I was there every week walking with him, and we created a bond. And I'm going to tell you how you can have a relationship with someone and you don't go to their house for dinner, you don't know the wife and the kids. Like, it's almost like he looked for me at the end of his sessions every Sunday. You know, where's John? When Malcolm X lost his life, I was supposed to go to the Audubon Ballroom that day. And, you know, most kids, when you're trying to get your driver's license the first time in New York, well, my partners figured in New York, you just get a guy $20, he'll give you your license anyway. And I said, man, I ain't giving him 20 nothing. I'm going to study it and pass it on my own. I ain't paying for my license. So we decided we was going to take a ride that day opposed to going to the Audubon Ballroom. We're going to take a ride, and I told Malcolm, I said, man, I'm not going to be there Sunday because I'm going to take my driving test Monday, so we're going on a road trip. And we were driving up by West Point. We had just passed West Point, and it came across the radio that Malcolm X was shot. They didn't say that he was dead. They just said he was shot. Well, I turned around. We was heading back, man. It was about 4 of us in the car. We was rolling back, trying to get back to the city. By the time I got back, everybody was in the street crying, milling around. He was gone. For that day, up until, I say, roughly 2 years ago, I don't think it was 2 years, really, but up until that time, it's not a day went by where it didn't run through my brain and through my soul that I felt like if I was in the Audubon Ballroom, some way or shape or form, I would have been able to prevent him from getting killed. That's how much I loved, respected, and admired him. And I felt like I cheated him and cheated myself because I wasn't there to do anything to help that man. But you know what I got out of it? That Dr. King, Malcolm X, they knew they was going to die. Malcolm knew he was going to die that night. But he wasn't worried about dying because he lived stronger in the ground than he did walking the earth. Think about how many people in this room know something about Malcolm X. You know, it's for any man that has the right to protect his family. You know, they showed posters of Malcolm X and he got an M16 on his shoulder and they're talking about because he said any means necessary, like that indicated that he disliked white people. He didn't dislike white people. What he disliked was the devils in the white race. When I say devils, meaning the haters. Anybody that come to your house with a sheet over their head and holes cut off of their eyes and tell you that I don't like you merely because of the color of your skin. I don't know you, but I don't like you because of the color of your skin. I'm going to burn a cross. I'm going to set your house on fire. I'm going to take pop shots at your wife and your kids. What kind of man are they? Those are the biggest cowards gone. And that's the individuals that Malcolm X was talking about. And whether it be in the field with a sheet on your head or whether you be in a corporate office with the sheet on your head. A bigot is a bigot, no matter where you call it or how you call it.
Now, you also, in a much different capacity, met Dr. Martin Luther King. And this is an important story because I think so often we learn about Dr. King and he's a poster or on a McDonald's commemorative cup. But it was really in your capacity as an athlete who was thinking about ways to use your athletic skill as a platform to say something about changing the world that you were able to meet Dr. King. Can you tell people about the Dr. King that
I had an
met?
experience at East Texas State. As a kid, I left. I was married my senior year in high school. I had a baby, little baby girl, and incidentally, one more time, I got married before my wife got pregnant. It wasn't one of those where I had a shotgun. It wasn't one of them. But anyway, things were so bad on the social situation in Texas, where, you know, when I land as a young kid with a wife and a kid, I land in Texas and look up and see the airport, well, coloreds and white restroom. And it said colored, and then it said white restroom only. And then I look over there, and the white restroom was pristine, looked like I could scramble some eggs in the floor. That's how clean it was. And then I looked over the colored restroom. It was dirty and filthy, paper, toilet paper, water running, gnats and flies. And I'm looking, white water fountain, black water fountain, and I'm saying, man, where the heck am I? But at the same time, when the coach came in, my name changed from John Carlos, that he was calling me on the phone all the time trying to recruit me. When I got there, all of a sudden, my name changed to Boy. And I'm saying, Coach, my name is John Carlos, not Boy. Anybody would take that attitude if you got your wife and your baby there, man, don't call me Boy. But then he called me the N-word, so I thought, because it sounds so much, he used the word nigger, and I never heard that, and he said with his accent, he said it real fast, it sounds so much like the other word. So my wife told me, nah, that wasn't it. So anyway, the bottom line is the friction was so bad down there, either somebody was going to hurt my family or myself, or I was going to hurt somebody. So I told my wife, we're going to roll it up and we gone. And I went back to New York, and I told my mother, I said, Mom, I said, I just couldn't take it down there no more, so I had to bring my family home. She said, well, why don't y'all send for some money? I said, Ma, I would never call you and tell you that I made a mistake. Send me money. I said, but I'm here now. So she was in there painting one day. I'm in there painting with her, and the phone rings, and it's a phone call from Professor Edwards. And he calls me, he says, John, he said, listen, this is Harry. I said, what's up, Harry? I had met him at San Jose in 1965. And he said to me, he said, listen, it's a meeting taking place, and people asked me to invite you to the meeting. So I said, hold on, let me check with my mother. I said, Mom, they got a meeting going on, and they want to invite me. What you think? She said, oh, if they invite you, you must need to be there, so don't worry about it. I'll finish painting. So I went and got cleaned up, and I went downtown. There was a hotel, used to be across the street from the old garden called the Americana Hotel. I go into the lobby, and my mother was a perfectionist. She liked furniture, you know, type of mother, you get the sofa and then put plastic on it. You can't sit on it for 10 years. You know, so I walk into the lobby, and I see all this beautiful furniture, chandeliers and big pretty mirrors and sofas, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I could move all this up into my mother's pad right now. So that was just floated through my mind, you know, based on my youthful days. So as that left me, I'm sitting there, and I said, well, all right, well, go to the desk. And I go to the desk, and I said, listen, I'm looking for, what room is SCLC in? I had no idea what SCLC was. Didn't have no concern. Now, I might tell you that my mom, my dad, my brothers and sisters, they were into the civil rights movement, but they was into the civil rights movement by watching TV and feeling the flavor, but they wasn't those that got out there and marched and did that thing. In their estimation, Dr. King was like God's first lieutenant that came to this planet. So I go up there and I knock on the door. Guy comes to the door, opens the door, he looked familiar. The only problem is I look at him, I say, this guy should be 6'2", 6'3", but he looked like he's 2'6", you know, in terms of stature. But anyway, he was a nice guy. He let me in, you know, courtesy. Would you like sandwich or milk or water or juice? What would you like? And I'm sitting there in awe, you know, just like sitting around looking at them and saying to myself, it's like I'm out of my element. And being out of your element, sometimes you don't connect the dots in terms of the people that I saw there, because I saw some of those individuals on TV prior.
Yeah, who was the guy who was 2'6"?
Well, that was Andrew Young.
Yeah.
You know, and then, you know, you see Andrew Young, but every time I saw a picture of Andrew Young up until the time I met the man in person, I always thought Andrew Young was about 6'3", 6'4", on a serious note. But when I saw him, you know, the face, man, the face looked just like him, but the body didn't.
Okay.
I'm saying whoever took the pictures of Andrew Young over them years looked like they must have laid on their back and was shooting up all the time. But anyway, he was very nice, very courteous. And we get in there, and I'm sitting down, and I'm just feeling the flavor of everybody. And then all of a sudden, about 20 minutes later, this bedroom door opens, and Dr. King walked out of the room. Now, my lip fell in my lap. You know, my heart stopped. And, you know, it's almost like being in the presence of somebody divine. My mother, when I told my mother, she said, Mom, Dr. King was there, you should have been there, you should have been there. Because I'm thinking while I was in the meeting that my mother needed to be a rock in my pocket or a bug on my lapel. She needed to be there. And my mother said to me, she said, well, son, I was there because you was there. But when Dr. King got to talking, the gist of the meeting was that Dr. King wanted to come out and support the 1968 Olympic boycott. Many individuals across this land don't even know that Dr. King had a vested interest in the Olympic boycott. But through the process of him saying that he wanted to become involved and he was going to make a public announcement that he wanted to come out and support the Olympic boycott, he said he had some things that he had to do. And when he got back from Memphis, Tennessee, he would do it. But in the process of the meeting, he made a statement that he received a letter in the mail, and in this letter they told him they had a bullet with his name on it, and he wouldn't have to wait long for it. Well, when a man says something like that, you take that and say, let me put this in my basket because I got to confront him about this later. So when the meeting is over, yes, did you have any questions? Yes, sir, I had 2 questions. First question is, did you ever play any basketball? You run track? He looked at me, he smiled, he said, nah, John. He said, yeah, I never even, couldn't even shoot pool. So I said to him, I said, well, I have a question, Dr. King. Why would you get involved in the Olympic Project for Human Rights? You're not a sportsman. Why would you get involved in the Olympic movement? And he said to me, he said, John, he said, imagine going out to a big lake and taking your little boat, your little rowboat, and going out to the center of the lake. He said, and then put oars in and just let everything get still. He said, and when the water gets still, he said, you reach down into the boat and you take out a rock and you reach over the side and you drop that rock. He says, what happened? I said, it creates vibrations. He says, absolutely, it creates waves. He said, those waves go out to the far ends of the lake. So everybody in the lake knows something is wrong, and those that standing on the shore can see that something is wrong. He said, that Olympic boycott is that rock. If you guys chose to step back, he said, you didn't give the finger. He said, you didn't drop a bomb. You didn't pull a trigger. All you said is, I have the choice to go or not to go, and I choose not to go. He said, you will send a message throughout the world that something is not right and we need to fix it. I said, well, powerful. Took that and put it in. And I started to walk away. He said, John, you said you had 2 questions. I said, oh, yeah, I do. I said, Dr. King, if you said they sent a letter to you and said that they're going to take your life and you won't have to wait long, why would you go back to Memphis? And you know what he says to me? He says, John, that's a very good question. That's better than the first one. He said, but I have to go back to Memphis and stand for those that won't stand for themselves. And John, I have to go back to Memphis and stand for those that can't stand for themselves. All my life, I've been dealing with people that should be upset about their standard of life, and they won't stand. There was other individuals that was just as upset and wanted to stand and wasn't allowed to stand. Well, what Dr. King was doing at that precise moment is what I've been doing all my young life. I just never had a phrase or a title to put it over it. Before Dr. King, there was a guy named Robin Hood. Robin Hood took the pea and split it. And in Robin Hood's estimation, there was 2 laws. There was God's law and there was man's law. If he went by man's law, half of y'all wouldn't be here. So he said, nah, man, I'm not concerned about the rich and powerful. Dr. King wasn't concerned about the rich and powerful. So when I asked him why would he go and he made that statement, I pulled my glasses down because I wanted my glasses to be on my nose because I didn't want to look through glass. I wanted these eyeballs to see his eyeballs. What was I looking for, man? Huh? What was I looking for?
Fear.
Think I was looking for the love, huh? Well, I was looking for fear. When a man tells you that someone said they have a bullet with your name on it and you don't have to wait, you should be afraid. But when I looked in Dr. King's eyes, you know what I saw? Love. Love for humanity. Dr. King let me know at that moment, yeah, I know I'm going to die. But he said, when I leave this world, I will be greater than I ever was. They can break my spirit by breaking my heart, but they can never break what I stand for. And I stand for justice and equality for all people. I took that with me. Then the question is, why does God send me to meet all these people? Well, ain't nothing special about me. I'm the same as anybody out here. I eat, sleep, gonna get up dead one day, just like you.
Well,
but why would God put me on this trip?
your time in the 200? No. Just kidding.
Well, that might be. That might be because I did something nobody did before, so that might be. But, you know, to meet with Dr. King was a heck of an experience when you sit back later in life and you reflect on the people that God put before you in your life, that you had a chance, if it was even a brief moment, and see what you can absorb from that person in that moment. You know, I look at Dr. King, I look at Malcolm, I had a chance to meet them. One of the heroes in the athletic world that I have the utmost respect for and had an early understanding was Jackie Robinson. When I met him as one of my father's friends, not as a baseball player, not as a superstar, just somebody used to go in the back and play poker with my old man, Willie Mays and all them. And then to not have understanding as to who Jackie Robinson was, and to go to the YMCA one Saturday and they showing the Jackie Robinson story. You know, Jackie Robinson wasn't the type of guy, you know, like the Muhammad Ali story. When they did the Muhammad Ali story, they had Will Smith play his role. Jackie Robinson played his own role in the Jackie Robinson story. And And I remember going there, sitting there, and they got the lights on, you know, you having a good time. But when they turn the lights out, you having a better time. Because we had the pranksters going on. We wasn't interested in the movie. But then as I'm scanning while I'm playing with my partner, I looked up and I saw my father's friend on the screen. Told my man, stop playing around, man, stop playing around. He said, what's wrong? That's my father's friend. Man, you don't know him. Stop playing around. And he stopped, and I started to focus. And I focused, and I learned that Jackie Robinson was born and raised right there in Pasadena, California. I learned that he was a good student. He went to UCLA. He led it in 4 sports. I learned that Jackie Robinson went into the military, became one of the best soldiers that we had at the time. And then I learned that Jackie Robinson was the first black man to cross the color line in professional baseball here in the United States. But out of all of that, what I learned even greater was the fact that he had all of these good things going for him. And merely because of the color of his skin, he had to be subjected to racism and bigotry by his own teammates, not all of them, but a lot of them. By his own city, the city that he represented. I like it like this. You know, his own city that he represented. Pay the light bill. So, in any case, when you sit back and think about what he had to go through, you know, him playing baseball, and then certain people that's supposed to be cheering for the Dodgers, they take a black cat and throw the black cat on the field, call him the N-word, a whole bunch of things. But you sit back and you think about the decency of the man. Because I don't know whether just any old body could have been in that position and tolerated the things that he tolerated. You sit back and think about him, you think about the Tuskegee Airmen right now in terms of things that people tolerated. But you remember at the same time, when you sit back and go to modern time in the 1968 Olympics, the things that Tommy Smith and John Carlos tolerated. We didn't take a seat back, but at the same time, we didn't get up and cuss America. We didn't put the finger up to America. We didn't have bullet straps across our shirts and say we're going to burn down or blow up America. All we did was tell America, say, imagine, as Dr. King said, if you step back from the Olympic Games, it's your choice to go or not to go. He said, but if you choose to step back, he said, do you think America would have fared as well at the Olympics? You think they'd have won all the medals that they won over the years? He said, let's take it further. He said, those that was in the war like your father. He said, if your father would have stepped back from the wars and all those blacks would have stepped back, and those that were sympathetic to their cause would have stepped back, he said, do you think America would be as great as they've been in the wars we've had in the past? He said, it's your choice to go or not to go. But then, remember how many people got offended because I made my choice.
Now, first, I'll just ask real quick, Aaron in the front here, how are we doing on time? I just want to make sure people have time to ask questions as well. And I also wanted to make sure I asked you this question because you and I have spoken about this, and it's in the book, that the Olympic boycott movement, the Olympic Project for Human Rights, did an ineffective job in reaching out to women Olympians to be part of the struggle. And then when the conflict was at its sharpest at the Games, it was world-class female athletes like Wyoming Attias who stepped up and really stood up for you guys. Can you speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, you know, like, you know, sometimes guys could be narrow-minded. And they could think, you know, that when they see the mirror, all they see is themselves. They don't see their woman or the female species standing next to them in any way, shape, or form, particularly back at that time. When they talked about Olympic Project for Human Rights, they felt it was a man's thing. There was no women involved. There was no women's thought process. They didn't let them become involved in any way, shape, or form, which I disagree with at that time and still disagree with today. When you sit back and think about, even though they were shut out, when we went and did our demonstration, I didn't see a lot of the guys that didn't go with the flow in terms of where I was, what my head was, what I believed in, to say, well, I stand by John Carlos while they was trying to kick me out of the Olympic Village and run me out of the country and just put my family down in the United States. But the women were the ones that stepped up The girls that ran the 100 meters and the 4x4, not the 4x4, but the 4x1 relay, Wamia Ties, Barbara Farrell, God, I can't remember all of them. I'm getting old. But in any case, those women stepped up and made the statement that these medals that we winning these medals in the honor of Tommy Smith and John Carlos. Man, that brought tears to both our eyes, just to think, hey, I ain't heard none of the guys on the team boast about, they respect us for who we are, but the women were the ones that stepped up. And I'm going to say this early, David. I always try and make people understand, about what's happening with men and women. In this world that we live, it's a lot less love than it needs to be. We're missing a lot of love.
That's true.
And that breaks up a lot of families when there's a lack of love. And you know what happened?
Time for one more question.
Yeah.
Can I ask you one more? Just because I want to make sure we got 5 minutes. I would be so remiss, John, if I didn't let people here know.
Stop, man. I'm going to finish this statement.
Please don't.
I'm going to finish this statement. All right, he overruled me.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I would just be so remiss if I didn't ask you this, job. Just because we've been traveling around talking about the book, and one of the things we've done is we've gone to different sites where the Occupy movement has been. We spoke at Occupy Wall Street, Occupy Columbus.
All you radicals.
Yeah, Occupy Chicago. I mean, anywhere. And it's been an amazing experience for us to go there. But for me, as sort of a fly on the wall, it's been an amazing experience to see how you've been embraced by these young activists who are there. Can you speak a little bit about the message that you brought to Occupy Wall Street, particularly this question of looking back and regrets versus not having regrets?
Well, when I went there, I had to tell all the occupiers, first things first, I said to them, I said, remember one thing. I said, the enemy wants you to cross the line and make a mistake so they can bust you in the head. So make sure that everybody's on the same plane. You understand? The same understanding, the same wants that you have. Don't let it be scattered or fragmented. Let everybody be on the same plane in terms of what they want, what they're trying to get out of this. I said, remember that everybody has an understanding that they have rules in which you have to follow. Like in 1968, we had rules that we had to go by. So you have to study the situation you're in. I told them, don't get in a situation where you get a lot of people hurt by doing something and have those that have the badge and the gun and the stick have to come crack heads because they take an oath. They have a mandate to do whatever the mayor, the governor, the military, the president tell them to do. And then I said to them, I'm here today because I am you. I said, 43 years ago, we had a quest. We had a fight. And so we did not win the fight 43 years ago. The fight still carries on today. Why am I here? Because I am you. And then I said to him, as you stand here right now at Occupy Wall Street or Occupy the World, I call it because it's happening all over the world. I said to him, remember, what you are fighting for is not for you. You're the catalyst to have it better for your kids down the line. That's why you're fighting for equality and fair wages and to keep your union alive and to have your pension plan still there for you. That's why it's time for you to step up now and start to look at politicians that give you a good story but don't do anything to protect your rights. You have a powerful voice. One individual can go to the Olympic Games and make a statement and resurrect the whole world. Well, everybody here is not going to make the Olympic Games, but everybody still have a voice. And until your voices are heard, they're going to keep rolling over you. So this is why I go out and support the Occupy movement, because they're concerned about the same issues that I was concerned about back in 1968. Only difference is the spectrum has grown larger. The circle has gotten bigger. Now it's not blacks or Hispanics fighting for rights. It's every ethnic group that's crossing the line right now to be concerned about the fact that I'm about to lose my house. Even the police that's out there cracking heads. Their mortgages on the line too. Their kids can't get into the universities either. Their son and daughter right now that got out is getting letters talking about pay your student loan and don't have a job. They have the same concerns that you have. But the bottom line is, when you walk out of this area today, remember one thing. Just like John Carlos had his crossroads in life and had to make a very important decision in life at a critical time in his life, I didn't shuck and jive. I didn't try and be neutral. I also had to make a statement. Am I committed ultimately, or do I have a partial commitment? Well, there's no partial pregnancies. Either you're pregnant or you're not pregnant. Either you're committed or you're not committed. Those individuals that stand there today, 43 years later, that had that same crossroads as I had right now in old age. You see, I'm an old man now. I feel good about who I am and what I've done with my life. But with so many of them right there that's standing right now and they're upset because they felt that they made the wrong decision, and other individuals are even more upset because they made no decision. Don't get caught up in your life when you have an opportunity to make things better, not for yourself, but for society. Muhammad Ali said, yeah, I could have the Rolls Royce and I could have the big house. He said, but it ain't about me having it, it's about us having it. God bless you guys, and thank you for giving us this opportunity. You kicked my ass. You kicked my ass.
You were amazing. I know, I pushed.
Hey, guys. Hey, look here. I know David loves applause. I don't come here for applause. But what I always tell people at the end when they want to applaud, I tell them, if you feel like you must applaud, go into your purse or your pocket and throw jingle up here. Oh, we got, yeah. Oh, come on, fellas. Throw paper up here.
Sure. We do have, I know some folks are going. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. But we do have about 15 minutes for Q&A if people do have questions.
Yes, ma'am. Come on over here. Hey, guys, listen up. Tell me before, man.
This is kind of like a personal question.
It's so.
I just wanted to know if
Can you talk? Yeah, just people can line up at the front if they want to ask a question. Do you want to? Go for it. Go talk right into the mic, or I'll repeat it. Go.
I just wanted to know, did you know Houston McTeer?
Yes, I do.
Okay, that's cool.
You related to him?
No, my ex-boyfriend's uncle.
We had the question, do you know Houston Mattia? Mattia.
Yeah.
And it was your ex-boyfriend's uncle?
Yeah.
All right.
The question.
Yeah.
Hi, I was just wondering, we were talking about American sports and trying not to separate from politics, but what about, like, Tim Thomas recently declined to visit Obama, even though he's the goalie of the Boston Bruins who won the Stanley Cup last year, and he won't talk about it. He made a single statement saying, oh, this country is going to crap, blah, 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 and you mentioned, like, we weren't giving a finger to America. That kind of seems like you're giving a finger to America because you're not talking about a specific problem, you're not willing to talk about it further. What do you think about athletes doing that type of thing? Like, if you're going to stand up for a political statement, shouldn't you be answering questions? Shouldn't you be, you know, talking about it more and talking about specific problems and offering ways to solve it and offering solutions instead of just saying, I think this sucks and I'm not going to support Obama?
What's your name?
Ariel Rojo. Oh, sorry, Ariel Rojo.
Ariel. Do you want to answer? Should I go first? Yeah, just very quickly. Tim Thomas, do people know the story? Goalie for the Bruins. The whole team went to the White House ceremony because they won the Stanley Cup. Tim Thomas declined to go. And when he was asked why, what he said was, look at my Facebook page. And I would make the case, first of all, that, I mean, it's anybody's right, any athlete's right, to not go to the White House if they don't want to go to the White House. That's their personal political decision. But I would strongly agree with what you said, that it was an incredibly weak move, that if you have this political conviction, to not then stand with it. I mean, think about what John Carlos and Tommy Smith did. They go to the Olympics. They succeed in the race. They raise their fist. They're vilified for it. And now 40 years later, here's John talking about it and trying to get his message heard. You compare that on one hand to Tim Thomas saying, check my Facebook status update. I mean, it's weak. And so it's like, I think that's one of the things, like if you're going to have convictions, you have to have convictions. And it's like what John said about being a little bit pregnant. I feel like Tim Thomas was trying to be a little bit pregnant. And the problem with walking a fence is that occasionally you slip. And if you slip, it's, you know, it's bye-bye stuff. And I think that's where Tim Thomas kind of ended up there.
Well, I'll just say simply, I think that someone had Tim Thomas's ear and put that in his mind and had him to do it, but didn't give him any explanation as to why he was doing what he was doing. You know, I look at it in terms of, you know, they have leaders and followers. And it appears to me that he's a follower. He follows someone else's lead. Simple as that.
You can hold on there.
Oh, this is mine, okay. Yes, sir.
My name's Adam, by the way. This person that came in second place, I don't know his name or anything.
Peter Norman.
Was he involved in your movement on the stand, on the podium at all?
By act of God. Yes, Peter Norman was very much involved. Matter of fact, I might say that, you know, Peter is my brother from another mother. Okay, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. First of all, when I met Peter, Peter was a young, cocky individual. You know, as young athletes, you know, they got their oats and they cocky about who they are. Now, relative to the black athletes that time in track and field, that's the attitude that we had. We boast about who we are and the gifts that God gave us on the field. And here was Peter come and had the same attitude as a young white athlete. Matter of fact, I keep saying young white athlete. Peter was actually 2 years older than me. You know, he was 25 when he went to the games. But the bottom line was I liked his style because he was cocky about who he was. He was sure about his abilities. And even greater than that, I found that Peter was even greater assured about his manhood, who he was as a man. He stood at his own feet relative to what he felt was right versus wrong. When you sit back and think about Peter Norman, and I want everybody to take this into account. In 1968, we had South Africa. Everybody knows the situation on South Africa. But in 1968 also, we had Australia. Australia and South Africa had the same parallel attitude towards race relations. When we left Mexico City, Mr. Smith and I, we came back to America, and the powers that be didn't particularly like us. The powers that be didn't particularly like Peter Norman. But when we came back, they said, let's go on one side of town and find Tommy Smith and just whip him down until we get tired. And when they get tired, he said, all right, man, let's go get some new fuel. Let's go on the other side of town and find John Carlos. And let's just whip him down until we get tired and we take a rest and go back to Mr. Smith. Well, when Peter Norman left and went to Australia, he had a beat down where it was 24/7 because they didn't get a break to go to somebody else and whip Peter. They whipped on Peter every day. They drove him to the point where he started drinking pretty heavy. They drove him to a couple of breakdowns. They broke up his marriages. They had dissension in his household as to whether he did the right thing or the wrong thing. And when you sit back and look at Peter, what did Peter do? Peter stood on the victory stand as a man. He didn't disrespect his flag. He stood at attention. He didn't raise his fist to the sky. He merely put a button on his jacket and said, I believe in human rights. Why did he believe in human rights? Because his mom and his dad were Salvation Army workers, and they taught him the value of giving love, respect to your fellow man. He didn't disrespect his country. He didn't disrespect my country. But yet and still, when they beat him down to the ground, Peter never denounced us. He never made a divide from us. He never said one word bad about us, no way, shape, or form. And I remember when I got the call that Peter died, and I didn't have nothing but holes in my pocket. But I was wondering to myself, could God give me enough strength for me to walk or swim to Australia? Because no way, hook or crook, I was going to miss his funeral. That's how much respect and admiration that I'll have for Peter for eternity. I've seen so many individuals that was in the Olympic Games that could feel the pain as a person of color that didn't have the gumption to stand up and do what Peter Norman did. So I always respect and admire Peter Norman. He'll be with me for duration. I'm glad you asked that question, too.
First, oh wow. I'm Don Williams, a former dean here at Grand Valley, and and I used to run the, anyway. You've talked about a lot of your developmental years and as you were getting older and some of the things you did. I'd like to hear about some of your accomplishments since then, because I know you've made some enormous strides educationally as well as in business.
Well, okay. You know, I never look at strides, as you say. I never look back to see what I've accomplished in my life. I just never focus on those things. I mean, I picked up a PhD along the way, and I did my PhD the unordinary way. You know, I got an honorary PhD. Let me tell you something about an honorary PhD. I had a woman come to me in southern Mississippi, I think Mississippi Valley, and a friend of mine, he was a track coach down there, and I went to speak at the sports banquet. So the next day, the woman was there, and he introduced me, well, Dr. Carlos, this is Dr. So-and-so. And I put my hand out to shake her hand, and she pulled her hand back, and she said to me, she said, well, I earned my degree the old-fashioned way. And I said to her, I beg your pardon? What's the old-fashioned way? Well, I rolled up my sleeves, and I got busy. And my partner looked at me because he was worried about how I'm going to come off with this. And I looked at the woman and I said, Miss, no disrespect, but let me ask you a question. Seeing that you did it the old-fashioned way, let's get into it the way you did it. I said, did you ever have an economics class? She said, yes. I said, well, they told me in my economics class that when something was of plenty, there was less value. In other words, when I got 10,000 apples, I can't sell them for a worth. But when I got 50 apples, I can sell them for the max. I said, now, how many universities do you think there are in the United States? She came up with a figure. I said, how many people you think got your degree the old-fashioned way? She started counting numbers. I told her, I said, you are correct. I said, how many people you think had the honor to receive an honorary doctorate degree? She said, very few. I said, just my point. I said, now let me go a little farther and tell you this. I say, with your doctorate degree that you got, did you have to write a thesis? She said, of course I had to write a thesis. I said, well, the thesis that you wrote was on people like me. I said, now, do you understand what I'm saying? I say, your degree is no more or no less than my degree. But I would never put you down. I applaud what you did. But I will not accept you trying to put me down for what they gave me. You understand? But, you know, relative to accomplishments, man, that's for people to determine after I'm gone from here about what I did. I don't even like to talk about what I did other than the fact that I try and be a good husband, I try and be a good father, and I try and be a good role model. Relative to the hurdles in my life, hey, man, that's just for you to talk about later. All right.
Good enough.
All right.
All right, so that's actually the last, or we're running out of time. So if we could just get one more.
Before you go, right?
One more? Okay. All right, so this is the last question.
Oh, it's very exciting to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
I wanted to hear a little bit about how you became such a great athlete. Where was the inspiration for the hard work that every champion demonstrates?
Well, you know, I really think that I was blessed by God. I was gifted. I was good in a lot of sports. You know, when a kid goes to school and school don't really mean that much to him, you begin to look in terms of what talents do you have, because obviously you don't have it in the classroom. So I started looking and said, well, I got good looks, but that ain't carrying me nowhere. Okay? And then I started thinking that, based on race relations, I thought that I was going to be the first swimmer to represent America in the Olympics as a swimmer. That fell through based on the color card. Then I was going to be a boxer, and I had aspirations of fighting maybe Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali, because I was a good Golden Gloves boxer in New York as a kid. My mother stepped in, and my mother said, nah, son, you're my baby boy. I'm not going to allow them to break your face up. Promise me you won't box. So I left boxing. And then through my Robin Hood days, when I used to go steal from the rich and give to the poor, there was two detectives, Mr. Lester and Mr. Bryant. They rolled up on my father. Like I said, Willie Mays and all them used to go gamble with my old man. Well, they used to come gamble too. And they knew my father pretty well, and they went to my father and said, Earl, there's some break-ins over the freight trains, and we think Johnny's involved in it. You need to tell him my father stopped him. Whoa, that's your job. You need to tell him. And where they built the new Yankee Stadium used to be a place called McCombs Park. That's where I grew up in the track world over there. And I was over there helping myself to some of my old school partners. They was getting brand new Converse sneakers, and we didn't have them, so the only way we can get them to go over and take theirs. So we was in the park getting their sneakers that day, and the two detectives had the police come, and they blocked the whole park off. And they came to the park, and they found me and my partners, told my partners to go sit up against the bench, up against the fence there, and said, John, we need to talk to you. And they took me out to like the inside of the track. And I said, yeah, Mr. Lester, what's going on? So we got something to tell you. There's been some break-ins. We think we know who's doing it. And said, they leaned into my face and said, and we're going to catch them. So he said, but I have something else I want to tell you. And I said, what's that, Mr. Lester? Mr. Lester was about 6 feet. Mr. Brown was about 6'6", 6'7". Big dude, hands up to here. Anyway, Mr. Lester said to me, he said, you have a talent. And I looked at him, I said, I have a talent, what's that? He said, you're a runner. And when he said you're a runner, I kind of smirked like that. And Mr. Bryan smacked me. I can see stars right now. He smacked me upside my head. His fingers laying over here. He was a big man. And he said to me, he said, John, don't you ever disrespect Mr. Lester. I said, I'm not disrespecting him, Mr. Bryan. I said, but Mr. Lester said I'm a runner. I said, if a woman got her purse snatched in the neighborhood, she'll chase the purse snatcher down and get her purse back. So I ain't nobody special. He said, no, you're special. And that's initially how I got involved in track and field. I was nibbling on the hook. I think when I really got hooked is when I looked around and saw just how many people I was turning on by the gift that God gave me. I mean, I didn't want to be no track guy. I wanted to be a swimmer. I wanted to be a boxer. I was a good basketball player. Dudes used to argue too much about who fouled who. I ain't had time for that. But the track thing, I didn't particularly like running around a circle. But then when I looked in the stands and I saw how many people was turned on by the ability that I had in track and field, it was great. But then it was an additive to that. The greatest thing was when I was in school and they used to tell me, show me Germany, show me this, show me that, and I couldn't show them. The greatest thing was that I reflected back to the time when kids used to laugh because I couldn't show them where Germany was or where England was. And I said to myself, I said, God is great because where I didn't know how to show them on the map, I'll be able to show them in terms of my presence being there. Because through my track and field, all those things that teacher was trying to get me to learn, God put me in the front row. It was almost like on-the-job training. And when I went to Europe, well, the first place I went to was Trinidad. When I went there, it made me realize one thing, because I thought all the black women lived in Harlem. I went to Trinidad and I looked and said, Lord, where am I? I must have died and went to heaven. So from there, I said, man, you mean to tell me all I have to do is run the 100, jump up and down, touch my toes a couple times, I can come here every summer? That was the process right there to get me involved. And then when I went to Europe after that, it was a done deal. When I went to Europe and said, you mean I got a free ride to Europe every summer? I'm still trying to run. So that's how my career got started. Hey guys, I just want to tell you one more time, such a warm reception that I got from you guys today, and it will carry me for the rest of my life. Now, relative to the book, if you can get a book, get it today. If you can't get a book when you can. Because if you think what we're saying here moved you, when you open that book, I guarantee you're going to think that you walk right into the movie yourself. It's a book that you can have, you can pass down to your brother, you can pass it up to your mother, your father. Because anybody and everybody that reads that book, I guarantee you, you're going to come out there with a basket full of nuggets that you learn from that book. History, laughter, tears, excitement, venom, everything is there in the book. And this guy here, I can't do nothing but take my hat, shoes, and pants off for him, because this guy here is by far, and I read a few books in my day, but this guy can put his hand on the pen and make magic. I mean, you know, it's not too many people can write a book and have people read the book and actually seem like they're out of body, like I'm living this story that I'm reading. And that's exactly what he did. Because I told David, I said, David, we do this book, I don't want it to be your brain, I want it to be my brain. In other words, when they see me walking in their mind, I want to see them walking the Johnny Carlos walk. And if he didn't hit it on the head, I don't think nobody will ever hit it on the head. He wrote a book that's a marvelous book, and he do great work in all his books, but I think my book might have took the front run now.
All right, so if we get one more round of applause, thank you, Dr. Carlos and Mr. Ziram, for coming out. Books will be in the back, available for purchase, and Dr. Carlos and Mr. Ziram will be in the back as well to give signatures. One more announcement.
Hey, just really quick. You heard that this was the first event for Black History Month.
Good start.
A great start. Make sure that you go to the website, gvsu.edu/OMA. Great events, but also on the back end of Black History Month, we have Diane Nash coming. So great history on the front end and great history on the back end.
Tell nigga, yeah, go to johncarlos.org. I got some nice things came out for the Black History Month, some nice t-shirts, some nice things, some nice videos. Check it out, johncarlos.org. Thank you.
Don't forget to complete your evaluations. Thank you.